In this tutorial, we will have a look how we can create this movement. As you can see, we can go left and right. So we will create this movement. And before we jump into the coding part, I actually want to thanks Cristian, Zamora, Vela, and Takudzwa Mambosasa for donating this month on Patreon. If you guys want to do, you can go on my Patreon page, and by donating you're gonna get a lot of benefits, so you can check out on membership page. Let's create a script first. To do so, let's move over to project tab, then assets. Let's right click on assets, create folder, and I'm gonna name that folder to something like script, but I already have a script folder, as you can see right over here, or we can just simply scroll down underneath our assets folder. So let's go there, right click, create, and then scripting, and we're gonna create a mono behavior script. Why? Because the script gonna sit on this player game object, so that is the reason of creating a mono behavior script, which basically means it's gonna sit on a object, or we will attach that script to a game object, so that is the reason. So let's go to scripts, let's right click, create, and then scripting, and we're gonna create a mono behavior script, and we're gonna name this script to something like player. So let's call it player, and now let's double click that to open it up in Visual Studio quickly. Once the compilation is done, select the player game object in the hierarchy and select that script and drag it over to this add component section. Or what else you can do, you can just click on add component and you can find the script by typing name of the script, which is player. So I already have, so I'm gonna just double click that script to open it up in Visual Studio quickly. So by default we can see we have start and update function. So in order to move, what we're gonna do, if we move to Unity and then select this player game object, game object, then go to inspector, transform, and play around x-axis. As you can see, player is moving left and right. So what we're gonna do, we will replace this x with our movement. So let's set back to 0 first, and let's move to player script, and we're gonna use this update function. And we do know that update function runs every single frame, so every single frame we're gonna check some for input. For that we're gonna use this input. So let's use this input dot get access. Make sure you just typing as I am doing right over here, and into barrows you need to pass this axis name, in which axis you want to move left and right. So we want to move horizontally or x axis. So over here basically we have to pass the axis name. So in our case we're gonna pass horizontal because we horizontally want to move. And make sure you just typing or spelling it correct, else it will not gonna work. And make sure you also close that up with semicolon. So this input dot get access horizontal, this function right over here, it's basically checked on your keyboard. Let's suppose if you press down a key, then this function right over here, it's gonna give you -1 value. And let's suppose you press down D key instead of A key, then it's gonna give you +1, or basically 1 to you. Or and if you just lift off your finger from both of those keys, then input dot get access horizontal function will give 0. So what we gonna do now, we're gonna store the result, whatever we have, we're gonna store into a variable. Variable are just like containers, we can put values. So we can go to top of our class, and we're gonna make a private. It doesn't need to be public, so we're gonna make a private float. The float basically those number which comes with decimal places like 0 0.1 also whole numbers are float numbers. And we can call this one to something like movement, and then close that up with semicolon. And then we can set movement equal to this. So this input dot get access horizontal can be -1 +1 or 0 depending upon which key you holding down. So if you hold down a key, so it's gonna be -1. So that's why this movement right over here will be -1, because we directly setting it, as you can see. And if you press down D key instead of a key, then this input dot get access horizontal will be +1. So that's why this movement right over here gonna be 1. And if you don't hold down anything like that, then this movement right over here will be 0. So Control S to save your script and then move over to Unity. So move over to Unity, and it's gonna take a few moments for compiling our script. Once it's done, we are ready to go. But we made that field private, so we should not able to see underneath our player script that field. So as you can see, we still not able to see that private field, which is the movement. But let's suppose you still want to see that private field. So how you can do that? In order to do it, go over to inspector. In the right, in the top right, you can see three dots. So just click there and click on debug mode. So as soon as you click on debug mode, as you can see, we are able to see now this movement parameter. So if I just go ahead and hit this play button in the top to play our game and try to hold down A and D key, you will able to see that this movement will change accordingly what key we just pressing down. So let's suppose if I press down D key, as you can see movement just going 1, and if I just lift up my finger, it's became 0. And if I press down A key instead of D key, we can see it's became -1. So what we really want to do, we just want to replace this X of our player position. So let's get out of play mode first, and let's go to normal mode. So we will go to top right one more time, and let's click on these three dots and click on normal to go back to normal mode. And now we can go to this transform, then position. We basically want to replace this X with our movement, which can be -1, +1, or 0, as you know. Let's suppose if we replace this X position of this player, firstly we will move over to this transform, then position, and then gonna access this X position, and we will replace this X with our movement. And movement, we do know it can be -1, +1, or 0. Let's suppose we hold down D key, so movement will be 1. So if we replace this X with our movement, which is 1, as you can see, it's going right to the right direction. And if we put -1, as you can see, it's going to the left direction. But if we put 0, it's basically not moving at all. It will be centered or just gonna add to our current position. So basically we just want to replace this X with our movement, which can be +1, -1, or 0. Means we will go to left, right, or we will stay at one position depending upon if we just lift up our finger or press down any key. So let's open up the script one more time, and for that we can use this fixed update, a fixed update. So make sure you just doing as I am doing right over here. So this fixed update right over here, it's called in fixed frame rate. This update can call up to in 1 second something like 60 frame, 65 frames, or 62 frames. So basically the frame rate over here in update function, it's not constant at all. But in this week's update, the frame rate is constant. Let's suppose in 1 second it's run 60 frames, means in the next second it will still run 60 frames. 60 frames in the third time, it will still gonna run 60 frames. So the frame rate is fixed. So that's why this over here it's called fixed update. So over here what we really want to do, we just want to go over to that transform dot position, and top of that we're gonna add a vector 3. Why? Basically what we're doing, we just going over to this transform of this player and then accessing the position, and top of this position we're gonna add the movement, basically which direction we really want to go. So we're gonna add a vector 3. Why? Basically this position, as you can see, it has x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis. So that's why we need to set a vector 3 which also has x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis. So top of this current position, top of our current position, we're gonna add the movement. So we will add a new vector 3 which also has x-axis, y-axis, and the z-axis, and make sure close that up with semicolon. So what we really want to do, we're gonna replace this x with our movement. So let's put movement. So this movement right over here can be -1, +1, or 0 depending upon what key we holding down. So if we hold down D key, so this movement just gonna be 1. So the movement right over here in the x axis becoming 1, so it will go to the right direction. And if we hold down A key, so it's gonna be -1, so the x right over here will be -1, so we will go to left direction. So that is the thing. And we don't want to move at all in the y axis. So if we select our player game object and the move tool from here, if you can find the move tool or this toolbar, you can just click right over here, the tool settings, I guess this. So make sure you just click right over here to get that. And we're gonna so select the move tool, and we don't want to move at all in the y axis. So that's why we're gonna put in the y axis 0f. So we're gonna put 0f, and in the z axis we're gonna do the same thing. We don't want to move at all in the z axis, so let's put 0f. And make sure you multiply these things with time dot fixed delta time. So make sure time dot fixed delta time. Why we multiplying with this time dot fixed delta time? To basically make frame rate constant. Means it's already constant, but let's suppose you have a fast computer, so in your case this fixed update can run in 1 second 120 frames. So you can see there is a huge difference between our frame rate. In my case it's gonna run 60, but multiplying with time dot fixed delta time. So make sure you multiply with fixed delta time, because the we are doing inside this fixed update, so that is the reason. So time dot fixed delta time multiplying with this makes frame rate independence. Means now whatever computer you're gonna use, it will still run with same frame rate, and the frame rate will be constant every second. So now we can press down Ctrl S to save our script, and we can move to Unity. So just wait for to compile. Once it's done, we can move left and right depending upon what key we holding down. So just wait for to compile, and we can just go ahead and hit this play button in the top, and let's have a look. So now if I press down a D key, as you can see, it's going to the right direction, and if I press down A key, it's going to the left direction, as you can see. But the problem is that we just moving too much slowly, so we need to move a little bit faster. So what we can do, so let's get out of play mode by hitting that play button one more time, and let's open up the script by double clicking on it, and let's multiply this whole thing with some unit, this movement, something like 5f. So let's multiply that. So this whole thing we can multiply with 5f. But instead of doing this, what we're gonna do, we're gonna make a variable in the top of our class, and we're gonna make that one public, so we can adjust underneath our player script. So we don't need to come to this script and change this value over again and again. So we will go to top of our class, and we're gonna make a public float, and we can call that one to something like speed. So let's call it speed, and by default you can give any value you like, or you can just close that off with semicolon, and later on underneath your inspector you can just give it a value. But I'm gonna give a default value something like 5f, and now close that off with semicolon, and let's replace this 5f with our speed, and speed is 5f. So this one is 5, and this one is, let's suppose, 1 or -1. So 5 into 1 will be 5. 5 into 1 will be 5. So it's basically means we will move to the right or left direction with 5 unit, because this movement right over here is -1 or +1 or 0 depending upon, and we just top of that we just adding this movement. As you can see, this is transform dot position, means current position of our player game object, and top of that plus equal we just adding the movement or which direction we basically going. So Control S to save your script, and we can remove start function we don't need, and also this comment we can just remove that, and press down Control S to save your script. Now let's move to Unity. So we will go to left or right depending upon uh, depending upon which direction we're going. Basically, if we press down A key, then we will move to the left direction. If we press down D key, then we will move over to right direction. That's it. Let's have a look on that, and we can just adjust the speed as well. Underneath our player script we can see, which is 5 by default we set, but we can give it to something like 10 or any value. So I'm gonna leave with 5. And now if we go ahead and click on this play button in the top to play our game, so let's see what's happening. So I'm gonna press down A or D key to move left and right. Now as you can see, we're moving pretty much fast left and right, as you can see, and you can adjust the value as well. It's totally up to you, and that's pretty cool to do. I hope you get the idea of this. So I'm gonna get out of play mode. I hope you get the idea that how you can move your player game object in Unity game engine with the help of C# scripting. And lastly, thanks for watching this video. I will see you in the next tutorial.